I don't know why people always send me beige. Like, they send all the guys purples and they send me beige. Like, where's my pinks and my greens? Instead, I get like beige or silvers. What is going on? Today's keyboard that we're going to be building is Neo65 Cu edition. So this board is dual mounted. This is the grage. This is the gray beige. This is actually spray coated, and there's 3 spray coated colors. There's retro white, grage, and the nebula. But for anodized, there's silver, gray, black, teal, gray gold, navy, purple, burgundy, and red. 65%. It does have a blocker separating the arrow keys. Top and bottom bezels are going to be a little thicker than the side bezels. Side bezel is pretty thin. And then as I can see, this is a screwless case design, meaning that all the screws are hidden inside the inner case. Just looking from the top, you can see it does use the pogo pin connector. It's a pretty simple top piece otherwise. You can also see the mounting points. Here is the side. So this is pretty cool. You see the bottom and the top case, right? They have a design motif right here where it starts on the top case, but then it flows into the bottom case, right? So that's always neat to see when they start a design on the top piece and then it flows into the bottom piece. So which is what you see here, just like a whoop. But you do have the two-toned, colored top and then the brass bottom. So it's kind of strange. They're calling it CU, but you can get a brass or copper bottom. So I have the copper bottom, but they do have a brass bottom. The brass is going to be a bit more yellowy, and then the copper is a bit more orangey. The side is interesting because you have, I'd say, 3 different types of themes going on. So you have the more like blocky top piece, and then the bottom piece is going to be more curvy, but then they have this contrast between the colors and also like the shapes. And then you can see the top piece actually does cover part of the bottom piece, so it's not just like a clear seam, right? I think it will see the same on the back, but from here you do see where it starts to split, but then they try to make it more flowy by going into the top piece. And then here is the back weight. Pretty cool thematic weight we have here. So it is very shiny, and you can actually get different ones for this, right? So you can get a brass copper, a silver, gold, black, or dusk. This one looks to be like the copper. It's interesting because this one has a pretty big weight. It's not just a small one. It's pretty much the entire bottom of it. They say the weight you can pick is free of charge from what I'm understanding. So you have this like cool accent piece right there. Looks magnetic. I've been playing so much Slay the Spire, and it looks like a relic from Slay the Spire. An astrolabe. That's kind of what it reminds me of, personally. So you do have this one sliver right here for you to put like along feet, and then the 2 right there. And then here you can see, ooh, you have the straight, and then it goes curvy. And then here is the USB port side. Oh, so you see it again right here. And then it's interesting because when we looked at the side, it looked like it was just like a straight block. But then when you look at it on the side, there's actually a dip right here. It's shaven off. So it's not just like a straight cube, as you can see with this curve right here. So you got a slight curve right here. But then on this bottom piece, you can see this curve is much more dramatic. So tiny curve, big curve, centered USB port, and then you got the little logo right here. And then here's the front lip. You cannot see the bottom. And then going back to this weight, so here you can see the seam between the top and bottom. And then the angle will come from this part. Screwless case design, but it looks like it's 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Top piece is pretty light, but interesting. You see they've actually added this like foam right here. So I'm guessing this is like their version of a force brake. These are already pre-installed for me, right? But you can see they have it on all the case screws. Here you can see points for the mounting. But yeah, it's interesting. They've added this just like a very thin like gasket. Like, like desk key switch film. It almost feels like that. but it is adhesive. And then here, the bottom piece, this is where most of the heft is. But you can see they have all these cutouts for like the alphas, acoustic. Here you can see there are the indents, also for the mountings and also to help you align the gaskets. There's a lot going on the bottom. This is where most of the heft is. This one does not have many walls, or the walls aren't very high at all. So the sides essentially just have no walls. So this would help you align the gasket mounting, right? And then these are for the case. Oh, interesting. Interesting. So here is the weight, right? You have a couple different choices for this, but here is deconstructed. So it looks like this part is one piece. So this has 3 pieces to the weight. So you would put this accent in first, and then to close it all up, you put this one in next. Cool. Hey. On this bottom piece, they have actually the cutout for this, so you can see like where it would fit in, because it does protrude out of, you know, the weight, like it's not flat. So they do have this right here. Face card. Do you want me to set up face cam? I'm just so lazy. I'm lazy. Hello. I know. Okay. But anyways, check this out. So you do have the battery compartments, but what they've done is they've actually added weights into here. And this is something that I saw with other keyboards that have battery compartments. But when you're set up with your keyboards like this and you have this like empty cavity, sometimes it can kind of create this very weird resonance. So if you're not getting like a battery for this one, mine did come with weights, so it fills this cavity so you no longer have that weird resonance. But here you can see like a daughter board, and you can see the 2 weights that fit into right here, and then they're secured by 2 weights themselves. It is interesting, they have the cutout right here rather than making this like flush, right? So if you check this out, you can see it does stick out, but I'm assuming if they wanted it to be flush, they would have had to make this like thicker, but maybe there wasn't like enough space with like the batteries and whatnot. So what they opted to do is just cut out where the weight would protrude out on the board. This is covering all that jazz, and it's held together by 8 screws. So here's the PCB. Whoa! So once again, you have this whole like orbital theme, right? And then it is screen printed on here too. But this is the hot swap PCB. And here you can see these points are for where the case screws would go, right? So you can split the left shift. You can choose your bottom row. You can do on-C ISO. You can split the backspace. Here's the back. So here you can see the connector. And then looks like no physical reset button. There's caps lock indicator LEDs. Plates. So from what I saw on the page, there are 4 alu, PP, carbon fiber, and PC. I have alu and PP. So you do have this, I'm guessing is for like if you have like the wireless PCB. And then here are the gasket points. And then if you look, there's actually relief cuts in it. So it's on both the top and bottom. So 4 on the bottom, 4 on the top, so a total of 8. And once again, these cutouts are for the case screws. No mounting point on the space bar, and then no flex cuts. So yeah, it looks like all the plates are relatively the same. So the 4 plate options. You know, I'm gonna say something mean. But because I know what Aki looks like, I can't take anything he says seriously. Because I just imagine him saying it. And I'm like, God, I can't take him seriously. I know, I said it was gonna be me. It's like, it's the opposite of saying like, no offense, but, and then you say something offensive. I straight up was like, this is going to be mean. So like, Aki was already mentally prepared, okay? But yeah, so this is the Neo65 Cu. So this will come in the 60 and a 65%, but this one I have is the 65. So you can see it does have the arrow blocker right here. Standard 65%, right? For a hot swap, you can pick your bottom row, stepped or regular cap, split or regular backspace. Bottom piece, you can get copper or brass. And then the weights, there are 5 weight options: brass, copper, silver, gold, black, or dusk. Right, this one is going to be the copper. So the 65 only has one layout, but then the 60 has Winky, Winklyless, and HHKB. So this board uses dual mount. PCB has the gasket points, plate has the top points, but it's not like your traditional top mount. You actually do have this sleeve that you would slide on, and because these plates, they're not completely closed, you can actually slide this on, which makes it easier to take apart, right? So you can put the screw in and then slide it in like this. You don't have to do like put the gasket on and then put the screw in, and then vice versa. You don't have to take out the screw and then the gasket. You can just slide it off like this. Boop. The mounting points are going to be on the PCB, and there's no flux cuts on the board. These cutouts on the plate are for the K screws, and there are 5 K screws. And if you're taking this board apart, you're gonna take off the escape and the tab, the 7 and the 8, this top right hand corner and the one underneath it, so you can see that these two are mirrored to each other. And then this one's a little weird, but you would take off left arrow, down arrow, and then you would take off this alt and then this like Windows key. So screwless case design, meaning that you don't see any visible screws on the outside. So it uses dumbbell gaskets. The orientation matters. The nipple part goes down, the flat part goes up, but you have the 4 on the top and then you have the 4 on the bottom. And then here you can kind of see like where the gaskets would align, right? It starts at $165, assuming you go plateless, and then it goes upwards to $220. So solder PCB plateless is going to be your cheapest, as well as the brass bottom. If you get the copper bottom, it's going to be slightly more expensive. So typing on this board, I think the biggest thing to note is that it sounds fine with or without foam. The switches I used weren't my favorite, so that was probably not a good move by me, but all my sound tests are going to be consistent with the same switch. It's not that the switches were bad, I just thought they weren't like the best, but they're also like not the worst. In terms of variance and sound, you know, whenever you hear a board with foam, you're like, oh yeah, that has foam. I felt like this one was a little not as like distinct. When I put foam into the board, it wasn't like very overwhelmingly like foamy. Like you could tell the sound signature changed, right? But it's not like the very distinct like, oh, that has foam in it. So I thought that was very interesting. Because typically when you put foam into something, you're like, oh yeah, there's that foam sound. But this one wasn't very obvious. It felt more obvious whenever I put foam in, especially for like the softer plate, because it did feel like there was more support. When I was typing on it, you could feel more of like a feedback. So in terms of sound, I feel like if you want like an overtly like foamy sound, know if it's possible to achieve with this, because it wasn't very obvious, at least with the switches that I used, right? And granted, like if I put PE foam, maybe that would change everything, but PE is also one of those things where it's like once you put PE foam, you can kind of tell like it has PE foam, right? So this one was fairly interesting in that regard. Also, in terms of build quality of life, I really like isolated top mounts. So they've done 2 things. So not only have they made the screw point open-ended so you can easily slide it off, I thought this was like a flex cut for like plate reverberation or vibrations, but it actually functions as either a flex cut and also as like a clip. Because if you look at the gaskets, they're not just straight across on the bottom, they have these like little tiny lips. And then if you were to flip this inside out, you'd actually see along the lips, it has like a crescent C shape, which matches this. So not only does this provide like a relief cut, but it also makes sure that your gasket doesn't come off, at least not easily. But with this open-ended one, right, you don't ever have to like take the screw out. You can just easily like pull it off. So I do think that's a really nice like quality of life. I will say with the softer plates, you do have to be careful, because when I was like trying to take off and like reposition the switch, I actually cracked it right here. And it's because these parts are so thin. I could see someone potentially pushing a switch in and then just having this like crack. So with the softer plates, like you definitely have to be careful. And if you're like, Patty, why did they put that there? This is for the case screws. And you can see like it's gonna be like thin right here and right here. So you just wanna be careful. Like I did snap mine. It's a little thicker here, but you can see thin right here. I thought the board sounded good with and without foam, but yeah, the biggest thing is I didn't quite notice a big difference between like foam and not foam. It was mostly when I was typing, like either it felt like more feedback when I was typing on it. And also the space bar. There were some typing tests where the sound was just unevenly distributed. Like the space bar had like drastically different from the alphas. I feel like Neo has just been releasing a lot of solid boards is ultimately like what it comes down to. Aside from like this part being very thin on like the PP plate, that might just be like my skill issue. I'd say maybe the variance on sound could be an issue for some people. There was variance, but it wasn't like quite as drastic. So if you're trying to like really get that foamed up build, it could be with the acoustics of this board, you're not able to achieve that, but I'd have to experiment. But at least with my configuration, it wasn't like as drastic. If you guys are interested, this goes live February 28th is the actual day you can buy it. But yeah, that's a build. Thank you QK for sending it out to me. And if you guys do decide to buy this board, please consider using my affiliate link. I'm now affiliated with them. It gives me some kickback and helps me continue doing what I do. And now I'm gonna go shower and then we're gonna watch anime.